Hey, what's up, guys? Your girl, Miss Mimi, aka Mimi the Great, and welcome to the Love Power Radio Show. I am trying to put something together. I think I'm still an engineer. That's what I want it to be, right? Um, it is Saturday. What's today's date? The 8th?
Yes.
This is August 8th. Oh my gosh, 20 and 20. We still in this thing making it happen. Listen, you already know this is my second Saturday back as I'm breaking stuff today. Um, Look, a lot of stuff be going on behind the scenes. Y'all just have no idea. No idea. Um, this is the second Saturday in August. So welcome back. Thank you for tuning in. You already know we're gonna get this started out because I want to know. I'm nosy like that. How y'all doing? How was your week? How did everything go? Prayer still up for the people in Lebanon because I got a chance to see that explosion. That was horrendous. And it reminded me of all those pictures and movies, how you used to see the atomic bomb blow up in the mushroom cloud and all that. And never thought I would ever see that in an era where I'm alive. Um, and so to see all the people that have been affected, prayers out to them and their family, those people who they haven't found. um, we know how that is because we went through that with 911, you know. So if you can share something with them, please find it in your hearts too, because it's going to be a while before they're able to get back to some type of I guess normalcy would be the word. So we have a guest here today. I don't want to say your name wrong.
That's all right. I'll say it. My name is Obes Wabara, and I'm running for Harris County Department of Education Board Trustee.
Awesome. So, Obes, how was your week? I know you said you're kind of tired because of the running, because you're running. How was your week?
Busy. It's very busy. And it's been interesting during this pandemic, the way it sort of changed the campaign process. Normally, so during the primary back in from November to early March, we just had like the events in person. So I was driving all around Harris County because the seat that I'm running for is an at-large seat, so it represents the entirety of Harris County.
Mhm.
So I was driving. I was up in Humble. I was in Pasadena. I was in everywhere in between.
Mhm.
Whereas now, instead of driving from place to place, it's like hopping from Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting, doing different forums, debates, interviews like this. So I
Mhm.
had something every day the last like 2 weeks. So even though I'm sitting in one place, I'm still like moving around like a crazy person. So it's been been
That's
exhausting.
good though. So, but which would you prefer? Driving clear? Because Houston, now you can drive 8 hours and still be in Houston.
Yes.
Plus the people who can't drive and the people who are on their phones and the people who are sleeping while
Mm-hmm.
driving, the drunk drivers. Which would you prefer, the Zoom meetings or in person or mixture?
I'd like a mixture. I hope going forward, after we get past this pandemic, we can do more things virtually because
Hmm.
that allows more people to be more involved. Because there's been meetings that I've been to when I went to in person, there's maybe 8, 10 people there. Then when you
Hmm.
have the Zoom call, there's like 100 plus.
Wow.
So there's definitely um, been more people involved with the Zoom meetings, but I
Hmm.
think you do lose something when you are not able to meet with people in person. I think people
Absolutely.
can get sort of a better idea of who you are when you're talking to them in person, and you can't just be like reading off the screen. Like you have
Hmm.
to be like coming right from the heart as you're
Hmm.
talking to them. So I think you do lose something when you
Hmm.
can't meet in person, but people are definitely more able to participate in the process when it's virtual like this.
Hmm. It's kind of like texting,
Yeah.
and they talked about that or have been talking about it for years now. How we've gotten to an age where people are more comfortable with and prefer only texting versus actually talking in person, and like you said, so you can hear the connotation of what they said, and did you mean it like this or did you mean it like that? Like what you mean when you said that? So yeah, I totally get that. And it does, like you said, allow for everyone else to who couldn't actually make it there in person to, okay, I can Zoom for 10 minutes or and still catch something, because nobody takes notes anymore.
You're not kidding, especially like in stuff like this. So you'll meet somebody, so you'll have like a really long conversation with them about whichever issue it was, and you'll see them again, and you're thinking, "Oh, we just talked about this thing when I saw you a week ago," and it's like makes you think you just went in one ear and out the other. It's like they don't remember the conversation.
Yeah, I have to say sometimes I'm like that.
Hey,
Depends
that's
who I'm talking to though and what we talking about. Some things and but that's too because a lot of people have so many things on their plates,
right.
you know. But still, okay, so let's get into I gotta keep my timer going. Let's see. We want to get into who you is. So your name is Obes
Yeah.
Wabara,
Yes.
right? Did I say it right?
Yes. It's actually we've got plenty of time. I'll tell you my real name, my full name.
Wait, you got extras? You
I
got
have
a stage name?
lots of extras. Oh yeah.
Wait, do I need pen and paper?
Sure, you might as well so you can see it all spelled out, like all official.
Okay, come on
So,
with it. What you
so
got?
my name is Obioha Onyeije Nwambara Jr. Now, obviously, when you're running for office, you want people to see your name, feel like, yeah, I know that person. I can say that, and be able to like roll with it. So it's difficult for people to see Obioha and be like, yeah, I know what that is. Whereas you
Mhm.
see Obes, that's much easier to remember. I think it's a pretty cool name. My mom started calling me that when I was like 10,
Okay.
because I'm named after my dad. I guess after a while she got tired of calling for Obi and both of us answering, so,
Right,
so, she,
right.
so she started calling me Obes around that time. And as I got older, like I really started to like it as a name. I like the way it looks on my
Hmm.
like my campaign stuff.
Hmm.
So I've just been rolling with it, and it's been working out for me.
Oh, awesome. At least it worked out for one of us because I went from Miriam to Mimi and people still don't. I'm just saying.
I
Like
feel you. With like
today,
I get some. It's like there's people I know. I tell them my name is Obes. They hear me say Obes, but it's forever Obis or Obes or whatever. At this point, I'll take whatever people want to pronounce it. My brother tells me all the time, you can correct them when they swear you in to office. So I'm
yep.
like, good enough for me.
And so, interestingly enough, I'm glad you said that. So when you get sworn in, because we're speaking this,
Yeah.
so will it be the whole entire name or just O's?
I think on the so when you're an HCDE board trustee and you sit in that half circle with all the other trustees and some of the administrative staff, you have like this plaque in front of your seat,
Hmm.
like on that half wall.
Hmm.
Uh, I think it's gonna say OPES for sure.
Okay. How long is your actual name?
So there are 6 letters in Obioha, 7 letters in Onyeije, 7 letters in Nwambara.
Unya EJ. Unya EJ sounds almost like Uche.
So Onyeije means
I was That was my next
it,
question. But
it
how you just
means
gonna do the third name? You got like 8 names. You only gonna give us the meaning of the third one?
so Obioha means heart for all.
Okay.
Onyeije means he who travels, and
Mm,
Nwambara means the child got rich.
nice. So he who
Yeah.
travels got rich. And what was the other one?
Obioha means heart for all.
Oh, heart for all,
Yeah,
which fits into what you're doing.
exactly. I
Oh,
think I hadn't even put that connection together till just now. But yeah, like being an
you're
HCD
welcome.
board trustee. Thank you. I'm gonna use that word. But being an HCD trustee, because it's not really a paid position. You get $6 a meeting, and there's not even a meeting every month. There's 11 meetings a year. They take off in March. So you don't do it for the money. You do it for the impact that you get to make on children and some adult students' lives to be able to really help them transform their current circumstances into what could be not just life changing for them, but life changing for their families to be able to lift themselves up through education. Because that is the greatest equalizer that we currently have in our country is the ability to educate yourself. And once you know more, once you've learned more, you can earn more, so to speak. So that's really a big reason why I wanted to get into this race and why I wanted to win this position.
Well, like we discussed earlier, tell us a little bit about your background and
Yeah.
how
So
you and your family came to Houston or America total.
Sure. So both of my parents are from Nigeria. My dad is actually a former refugee during the Biafran War, the Nigerian Civil War in the late 60s. My grandfather was able to send my dad, his siblings, and my grandmother from Nigeria to Lisbon, Portugal, then from Lisbon, Portugal to Mount Pleasant, Michigan. And the reason he was able to do that is because he was a college professor at the University of Nigeria in Nsukka. So had he not had that position, they would have been trapped in Nigeria along with the vast majority of other people. And actually, my dad's oldest brother, my uncle, actually was a soldier in the Biafran army at the time. So he was not able to come right away. He came over months later. And then my grandfather was actually a political prisoner, so he wasn't able to come over until much later also.
Hmm.
But it was that educational connection for with Michigan State University and the University of Nigeria that allowed him to be able to send his family to the United States and be able to escape the Civil War. So while most of our students, actually some of them, have escaped civil wars, I actually talked to a precinct chair that escaped that very thing. But most of our students are not using education to escape a civil war, but they are using it to try to transform their lives from poor circumstances to better circumstances. And anything that I can do in this capacity to help them do that, I'm willing to do.
Hmm. So, and what is it that you do in your, I want to say your other life, but outside of running, what is your what type of work do you do?
So I'm a category manager at a pipeline company. My category is fabricated materials. So basically, anything that's fabricated that we use out in the field goes through me and my category.
Okay, cool. And how does that relate to? Because we talked about that. The position that you're running for.
So as a category manager, I deal a lot with suppliers, with contracting, the entire contracting process, be it negotiating back and forth with suppliers, be it finding suppliers in the first place via what's called an RFP process or request for proposal. And we work in teams to go over capital projects, budget analysis, forecasting, and all those things are major roles and responsibilities for an HCDE board trustee. So I think I'm uniquely qualified in that I'm the only person that's currently running to get the support and votes of precinct chairs that has that type of experience. And I won't have to learn on the job. It's something that I do on a daily basis and something I've been doing for the past 4 to 5 years.
Hmm. Okay. Oh, I better not move. Awesome. So I don't know what exactly, like the specific job titles of the board of trustees. What would be your what would be your job title or
So
your job description rather?
So it'd be sort of what I just talked about with working with contracts, working with suppliers, holding suppliers accountable to make sure that they provide the things that the contract says that they will. But there are different groups within the board. So actually, take it even a step back. There are 7 board trustees on the
Hmm.
HCDE board. There's a president, there's a vice president, then there's different individual work groups within those 7 people. So I'm not sure which work group I would gravitate more towards, but there are opportunities to sort of focus more closely on certain aspects of the job. There's like, for instance, my platform hinges on prioritizing 3 areas, which is expanding Head Start, which is a pre-K program. It's organized by not just HCDE, but other organizations. Um, so right now it's just in the northeast part of Harris County. I'd like to expand it throughout the rest of the county so that more families and more students can benefit. Because we've all seen all the studies that show the sort of drastic differences there are for kids that get involved in early education and kids that don't. So being able to have more students benefit from that can only benefit our county and our city as a whole. I want to increase access to school-based therapy services,
Hmm.
which is benefits kids that have intellectual and physical disabilities
Hmm.
with occupational therapists and other types of therapists. Right now, there's only 7,500 kids that benefit from that out of about a million students in Harris County. And the
Wow.
reason for that is we only have 146 school-based therapists. So we need to hire more therapists so they can see more students, more of them can benefit. And the last part is I want to increase the number of programs put on through CASE, which is the Center for After School and Summer Enrichment. So I want to make sure that we're nurturing students when the school day ends and when the school year ends, so that nobody falls through the cracks after the school day, and that nobody falls behind during the summer months when school is not in session.
And forgets what 2 times 2 is.
Exactly. Because like one thing that a lot of other, I guess the word they use is developed nations do is
Uh-oh. I think either his internet connection stopped or mine. So until he get his connection back, you guys. Hey Tarska, thank you for joining. Thank you for watching. Uh-oh, there we go. I think we got him back.
okay.
There we go.
Okay, cool. So what a lot of other nations have, instead of a larger summer break, they just have sort of like a month here off, a month there off.
Hmm.
So when we have the 3 months off for summer break, like we have here in the United States, a lot of kids don't do anything educational during the summer months. So then they come into school and they have to spend a good amount of time relearning what they forgot from
Hmm.
the previous school year.
Hmm.
I think if we were instead keeping kids on track during the summer months, they're not spending that time at the beginning of the school year relearning old things. They can just get a jump on new things and not be having to play catch up for a third to half the year.
Which is great. I was fortunate enough to have my dad didn't play that. We could play, go outside and play and stuff in the summer, but we also had we still had homework assignments, so to speak, that he would give, which I always preferred those from the teacher because daddy gave us stuff that we didn't understand, but he didn't care. We still had to do vocabulary and reading and
Oh yeah,
math and all the things, especially because he felt like um, black people were tested so low, or we were always the ones that math and science just was not something that we were taught, or that it was strong in the community. So that was something that he made sure um, we had to continue to do during the summer months. So, with that being said, and I love these three, your Head Start expansion, you want to expand it outside of Harris County, right?
no, I want to expand it throughout Harris County. So
Throughout.
right now, it's only in the northeast part of Harris County.
Wow.
So if you're not in Northeast Harris County, you really can't take advantage of the program because like you'd spend. I mean, we both live in Houston. It's very difficult to drive across Houston, even under the best of traffic circumstances.
Hmm.
So when you're trying to get your child to Head Start, let alone get yourself to work, if you've got to drive across the county, it's just not going to happen.
That's true.
Whereas if we've got something that's within like a 20-minute, just being like conservative, like a 20-minute radius of everybody in Harris County, you can. I think most parents would be willing to make that 20-minute sacrifice if they knew their child was going to be in a safe environment
Hmm.
around kids their own age, learning
Hmm.
how to socialize, but also learning like in like an actual like a formal educational situation. I
Hmm.
think that's something that a lot of parents would be interested in. And even throughout this process, I've talked to a number of precinct chairs when I bring up the Head Start expansion idea. They go, I was a Head Start kid, and it made a really big difference for me in my life. Like I'd love to see the program expanded more, so even
Hmm.
more students can have the same type of advantages and opportunities that I did from being in that program.
Hmm. So, why do you suppose, and you may know, you may not, it hasn't been pushed um, in the manner that 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 you want to push it in?
So a major reason for that is up until this time last year, the board was dominated by the Republican Party. In
Okay.
fact, they were lobbying the state house in Austin to actually completely do away with the Harris County Department of Education. Harris County is the only county in Texas with its own Department of Education. So their stance was we don't need it. It's a waste of taxpayer dollars. We need to get rid of it, and then put that money towards things like private charter schools that don't benefit the public good. Now that the this time last year the board was 5-2 Republican. At this point, it's 4-3 Democrat,
Hmm.
with an opportunity if Erica Davis, who is running for C5, and whoever wins seat 7, me, hopefully,
Wow.
it'll be 6-1 Democrat. And even with the numbers at 4-3, the board has already voted to expand the program in southern Harris County. So, but that still leaves a gap between Northeast and South. We need to make sure that people that live in Northwest Harris County and Central Harris County have access, and everywhere in between have Head Start centers. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a big, but that's why a lot of the initiatives that I'm looking to push have not been pushed the way I wanted to see, is because we didn't have the numbers to do it, and now we finally do. There's a huge
Okay.
opportunity to finally make these types of transformational changes.
Is it also something that's like a financial, would it put a financial strain on the school system to have those head starts?
It would not. So there's actually about $20 million right now that's unallocated in the HCDE budget, that can be put towards any number of programs. It doesn't have to be just the three that I'm prioritizing, but could be put towards any number of programs. Like, for example, one of the things that HCDE has started recently is a program for teachers to go online and be able to get school supplies at no charge to them. Basically, they go on to basically put, like, mark the things that are on their wish list, whether it's like pencils, erasers, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And HEDE will buy those supplies and send them to the teacher's classroom. So
Wow.
it's like, basically, the way I like to think about HEDE is, if you can dream it, they can do it.
Hmm.
There's no restrictions on what the HEDE board can do in terms of building programs or funding existing programs.
Mm-hmm.
It's really the sky's the limit in terms of what the board trustees can think of, or get outside input from parents and concerned citizens to be able to put together what could make the best possible educational experience for Harris County students.
Mm-hmm. So would it be safe to say that when the numbers with the board members or the trustees were more Republican, um, it, trying to see a nice way to put this, that they didn't really give a care about education when it comes to children.
Not for the type of kids that need the help most. So they care a great deal about their kids, but their kids are in private schools.
Mm-hmm.
And I know about that because, so I'm originally from Delaware, and I spent half of my pre-college academic career in public schools, and then the other half in private schools.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you, it's like night and day going from public schools where, at least the last public school I went to in Delaware, it seemed like at least 65% of the school was black.
Mm-hmm.
So everywhere I went, black kids everywhere. I don't think we had any black teachers, but we had black students everywhere. And of course, there was a 3-floor building. Second floor did not have air conditioning for whatever reason. And like during the summer months, it gets pretty hot in Delaware, just like it does. Well, not just like it does here, but it gets hot in Delaware. It gets humid in Delaware.
Mm-hmm.
So to be, 20, 25 people in a class plus the teacher, or if there's a teacher's aide, 2 or 3 teachers, it get
Mm-hmm.
really warm and uncomfortable. It's hard to learn in that type of environment.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when I went to private schools, we had like professional chefs making lunches.
Wow.
We had wood floors. We had wood lockers. I think I remember anybody putting locks on their locker doors when
Mm-hmm.
I was in high school.
Wow.
We had, like, my high school looked like a college campus. So when I went to college, I was like, oh, I'm already very much accustomed to walking from building to building to get to class.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas my friends that went to public school is like, okay, I've got to learn how this works. Seeing something small like that
Mm-hmm.
makes a big difference when you're trying to get your feet wet in the college environment and like still do well while
Mm-hmm.
you're adjusting to all these other changes. So the Republicans that were on the board before cared a great deal about those private school kids, but that makes up a small percentage of the kids who are in school in Harris County.
Mm-hmm.
Most kids that go to school here are in public schools, so we need to be making sure that we're putting the right resource towards those kids. The private schools can take care of themselves; they've got all the money that they could ever need.
Mm-hmm.
We need to make sure that the kids that are underprivileged get those same resources, because that's really the difference between kids that do well and kids that don't. It's not an intellectual difference. There's nothing about the less fortunate kids that's different about the wealthier kids. The wealthier kids just have parents that have money. That's the
Mm-hmm.
only difference.
Mm-hmm.
So if we give those uh, less advantaged kids the same opportunities that the rich kids get, how far could they go? And that's something that I think we need to see. And I have a good idea that I think those kids will do just as well as the rich kids do if they're given an opportunity. That's really what I'm asking for a chance to do, is to help give these kids an opportunity at success.
Hmm. So do you? It's you say okay. So the Head Start program is primarily northeastern Harris County. Is that because of the diversity that's on the southwest end? Because I know southwest side and not all of southwest, but majority of southwest is predominantly, I think I can say predominantly, I think I can use that word, um, blacks, Hispanics, Africans, and other cultures on the other side of what is that, maybe 59 or so.
Hmm.
So do you think that primarily that's why northeastern side only gets, or that's why they put that out there for the Head Start
Well,
programs?
I don't, I can't say for certain that that's
Mhm.
why they decided to prioritize Northeast Harris County, but that has seemed to be how things go here in our area. Because like when I first moved from Katy, when my family first moved to Texas, we lived in Katy. My parents live in Fulshire now. But when I first moved from Katy to Houston, I bought a house in Third Ward. And just like the difference from public school and private school when I was in Delaware, difference between being out in Cinco Ranch and being in Third Ward,
Mhm.
again, night and day.
Mhm.
And I just remember thinking, why are there no streetlights here in Third Ward? Like it seemed like it was daytime at night with the amount of streetlights that they have out
Mhm.
in Katy, whereas everything looks so much more ominous when it's dark.
Yeah.
And it's like you're just trying to walk across the street to get to what's a corner store or a restaurant or what have you.
Mhm.
When it's properly lit and you're walking across the street, it's like, oh, that's just a person walking across the street. When it's dark and ominous, the imagination wanders.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's true. That's true for you or me. It's true for the police officers that are paid to patrol the streets to make sure nobody's doing anything wrong.
Mhm.
So that was just one big difference. Um, but it's like if we have the money to put these type of resources in the wider, wealthier areas, we have the money to put these resources in the poorer and communities of color.
Mhm.
And there's no reason why we shouldn't do it. And this is actually one of the organizations that, because of its size, has the ability to do it, and be able, because of its scale, has the ability to do it much more cost effectively.
Mhm. So when they talk about how they don't have enough money for different programs, is pretty much a fabrication.
It's all about priorities, right?
Mhm.
So if your priority is criminalizing students, then you're going to do things like putting more police in schools.
Gotcha.
You're going to do things like building more prisons. You're going to do things like hiring more police and buying more cars and all those things. Whereas if your priority is educating and developing students, you're going to expand Head Start. You're going to expand CASE. You're
Mhm.
going to hire more school-based therapists.
What's
So
case? Sorry to
CASE
break
is,
in.
CASE is the Center for After School and Summer Enrichment.
Okay.
So things like summer camps.
Gotcha.
If you're going to have like your science clubs, your math clubs, garden clubs, whatever type of clubs after school, is put on through an organization like CASE.
Okay.
So like if your priority is to develop students or develop people who will be, the adults and the citizens and decision makers of tomorrow,
Mhm.
then that's where you put your money, is into making sure that they're taken care of between the time that they start school in kindergarten or pre-K and the time that they finish high school at the very least. I
Mhm.
think about it like somebody crossing a street. So if your priority is making sure that the kid gets across the street safely, you're going to build a crosswalk. You're going to have the signal on each corner that says when it's safe to walk, when it's not safe to walk,
Proper lights.
and then you'll even have you have a traffic light, and you'll even have a crossing guard.
Mhm.
So like when you go past elementary schools in the suburbs, they've got all those parents who volunteer to be crossing guards, and you got to drive so slow, and you got to wait for all the kids to cross the street before you can drive across the street at like 5 miles an hour.
Mhm.
Whereas the kids that are in the city, very different experience for them. They're like waiting for these cars to zoom by so they can try to. It's like they're playing Frogger, so they can get across the streets without getting hit.
Absolutely.
So like there's no reason why the kids that go to the city schools can't have that same experience that the kids out in suburbs do.
Hmm.
It should be the same. Like I hate hearing people say, "Oh, I love living in the city, but I want to move out to Katy. I want to move out to Cyfair. I want to move out to wherever that's not the city of Houston, so my
Hmm.
kids can go to a good school."
Hmm.
They
Wow.
should all be good schools, and we
Right.
can make them all be good schools.
Hmm. So, what would it take from the people? Because it's not just going to be a one man fight, if you will, like for you for the place that you're running for that you're going to get, or the seven people that are on the board of trustees. What would it take from the people, the parents, the people who know children that are in school? What would it take from them to help you um, make your make everything happen?
So I think a big thing, and something that we've seen, especially during the pandemic, as people are working from home, is for parents to be as involved as they can in this process. So there's a monthly HCDE meeting, for instance, where the public is invited to come and sit and be able to ask questions, provided that they send in questions ahead of time. Um, but like they're able to show up and ask questions for people to be involved, not just with HCDE, but like showing up at city council meetings, county commissioner meetings, and like make your voice heard. Um, and then like if you know who your representative is, like reach out to them separately and say, hey, this is an issue that I see. And you might even have a potential solution. Like, this is an issue that I see. This is what I think it would take to fix it. Can we talk about this? Because if you have a good representative, like if I was your board trustee, it's my job to listen to what you have to say and incorporate some things that you want to see happen.
Hmm.
And if I don't do that, then you should vote me out of office. So we have a lot of times people that don't have the public's best interests at heart. And it's our job, if they're not doing that, to vote them out and put in people who do. So I
Hmm.
think that's a big thing. But outside of voting, because when we have basically have elections every year, but it's not always for to get in and out people that affect these type of things. But things that people can do is, like I said, get involved in their local school board. Doesn't have to be HEDE. Like um, like Alvin ISD, KD ISD, Houston ISD, whichever ISD you live in,
Hmm.
go to the board meetings, talk to the board trustees there, let them know what you're seeing, what you feel are the shortcomings, and hold them accountable, whether it's at the meeting physically,
Hmm.
or if maybe you're more comfortable with, talking to your neighbors and like, amassing numbers before you go to the board meeting or what have you. I think the biggest thing is making sure that your voice is heard and that people understand what the problems are in the community and what you'd like to see happen.
What would you say to the people who think, and I hear this a lot because one, you said the V word, right? Vote. But to the people who think that their voices mean nothing when it comes to voting and driving home the importance of going to the meetings, what would you say to them to encourage them to get more involved?
I think about something that I've heard a lot of older Black people say to me, especially in recent years, I've gotten more active in the community and active politically, is if your vote didn't count, they wouldn't try so hard to take it from you. Especially for people in our community, in the Black community, and in the Latinx community. There's a lot that gets done every year. People literally spend millions of dollars every year to make sure that we can't vote, so that
Okay.
we can't make the changes ourselves. That we have to beg them to make the changes.
Hmm.
Whereas if we had the tools, we would just do it ourselves. So I think to do your best to sort of change your perspective about voting, why it's important. Because I mean, people tell you that voting is important till like the cows come home. We say it all the time. It's like you have to
Hmm.
vote, you have to vote, you have to vote. But not everybody can vote because of sort of the voter suppression tactics that are put in place, which are very effective. Like for instance, Texas has a voter ID law that if you don't have one of a very strict list of forms of identification, you can't vote. Whereas some states, you don't need any voter ID to vote.
Hmm.
So people do a great job of discouraging people from voting and like physically preventing them from voting.
Hmm.
But I would ask them, I'd ask people that feel disillusioned with voting to think about why people would go to such great lengths to keep you from voting if it didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
So even though it can be very difficult for some people to vote, oftentimes, not all the time. So for some people, not necessarily in Texas per se, but in other states, it can be almost impossible to vote. If there's
Mm-hmm.
only one, if you have to get your ID from DPS or the DMV, and the closest one to you is 65 miles away,
Yeah.
there's not a bus that's going to take you 65 miles away from your house.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have a driver's license, how do you go to get a driver's license if you can't drive to the place where you get your driver's license?
Right.
Or like maybe you need to get a birth certificate to be able
Mm-hmm.
to get identification. Well, if you weren't born in a hospital, you might not. And there's more people than you would think that were not born in hospitals even today.
Mm-hmm.
So you weren't born in a hospital. You don't. They didn't give you one when you were born. And
Wow.
then again, like the building that you have to go to get a new one, maybe 30, 40, 50, 60, even 100 miles away. I remember when we moved here, my dad couldn't find his birth certificate. So he had to search online to find the building where he had to go to get one.
Mm-hmm.
Then he had to go and wait in line all day to
Wow.
be able to get his birth certificate so he could finally get a Texas driver's license.
Wow.
And it's like, and he's the type of person like he's pretty high up where he works. So like he had the time to actually like just take the day
Mm-hmm.
and get his birth certificate and then get his driver's license.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody has that ability to just say, "Hey, boss, I'm taking today off. I have to go get my birth certificate." For a lot of people, they just don't have that luxury. So that's not by accident. That's by design
Hmm.
to make sure that certain people can't vote, or it's extremely difficult for certain people to vote. So that shows you how important it is to the power of voting is that people would go to those lengths to stop you from voting. So I'd ask people to think about that, but I would also tell people that voting is just one tool. It's not the only thing.
Mm-hmm.
You can get active in your community in all kinds of ways, whether it's volunteering or starting your own initiatives, or even just working with your neighbors to take care of the issues that you can take care of in your neighborhood. There's many ways that we can create the change that we want to see in the world around us, not just voting, but voting is a big one. And I hope
Mm-hmm.
that people take the time to research candidates. And one thing that, in fact, somebody asked me about this the other day, like, what's one thing I would say to people that are looking to get involved locally? Just pick one race. In fact, you could like take one of those sample ballots, like in Harris County, the sample ballots like five
Mm-hmm.
pages that are like this long. Just like go to like a random page, just pick one and then look at the however many candidates are in that race and then educate yourself on who's running,
Mm-hmm.
decide who the best person is for you in that race, and then do whatever you can to help them win, whether it's volunteering to like write postcards, letters, make phone calls when it's not a pandemic, knock on doors, and just just like involve yourself that way. It can be a really eye-opening experience when you are that directly involved in the political process.
Okay. And I'm sure it can. I used to be more involved in what I've been, and it's definitely a totally different world. And you said earlier, if the people knew their representatives, so yes, on the radio, get involved, people. That's great advice. Um, oh, the representative breakdown. So each person, because it's 7 people, correct?
On the board of trustees, yes.
Uh-huh. And everybody has a particular area, or how does that work?
So there are 4 people that have districts, and then
Okay.
there are 3 people in at-large seats, like the one that I'm running for.
Okay.
So if it's an at-large seat, that covers the entire county.
Okay.
If it's one of the district seats, it covers a specific area of Harris County.
And how can someone find out where or who their representative is?
So on the HCDE website, which is hcde-texas.org, I think I want to say there's a map that shows you which district you fall in, and you can look that way,
Mhm.
or you can just reach out to one of the 3 at-large members.
And what places or who are they? You can go ahead and list yourself.
Yeah, so seat 7, me, wink wink, is an at-large seat. Seat 5 is at-large, and then I believe seat 3 is also at-large. So seat 5 is currently held by a Republican named Michael Wolf, although he's not running for reelection.
Okay.
Seat 7 is held by Don Sumner's another Republican. He's running for reelection, and then seat 3 is held by Democrat Richard Cantu.
What determines whether or not they run for re-election or no?
It's just a personal decision.
Okay. Whether or not they want to stay in or leave?
Yeah. So, for example, the reason that we're in this position right now with this precinct chair special election is that the woman who won this race for the primary back in March, Andrea Duhan, she
Hmm.
was appointed to a different seat on the board. Like the day after she could legally remove her name from the ballot, she was appointed to a seat on the board. And that seat was open because the former president of the HCDE Board of Trustees resigned from that seat so he could run for the Texas State House. So he just decided, in the middle of his term, like he had just gotten elected or reelected in 2019. He decided a few months later that he didn't want to be in that seat anymore. He was going to run for a different seat. So he
Hmm.
resigned from his seat. So
Oh.
it's just about personal choice. Um, for seat 5, the reason that guy, well, one of the reasons why that guy is not running for reelection is he got himself in some hot water over sexual harassment allegations.
Wow. Okay.
And I think Erica Davis is going to win that. I think she's going to be a fantastic board trustee. I look forward to serving alongside her.
Hmm.
But there's any number of reasons why. Like there's no term limits, for instance. But there's any number of reasons why somebody would no longer want to hold that seat or not want to run for reelection. And then sometimes it's as simple as people realizing, okay, the numbers on the board have changed.
Hmm.
We're not going to have the same type of control that we had before, and I don't want anybody to do to me what I spent the last few years doing to them. So
Mm.
there's any number of reasons.
Wow. And like it's on the radio. I love my engineer. She's so awesome. Thank you to the most awesomest engineer available.
It's fantastic.
Early voting starts October 13th, 2020, guys. And I was listening to the news the other day, and they were talking about how, um, like Obe said, they're making it more difficult for certain people to vote. One, two. Some of the things that are popping up, something my dad used to talk about all the time, are the distractions, right? There are a lot of things going on. You got the pandemic that's overall, people still don't have money to eat, money to pay bills, et cetera, et cetera. You have a lot of things going on. And instead of them, well, let me ask you this. Obes, do you think it would be a good thing to move the election or go forth with it in spite of the pandemic?
So, well, for starters, the only way that, because I've seen there's been some confusion about what a certain president can or cannot do about the date of the election.
Hmm.
He cannot unilaterally move it. It takes an act of Congress to move it. The House is democratically controlled. They would never agree to that. The
Hmm.
Senate is currently Republican controlled, but they won't agree to that either because once your term ends in January of 2021, if there has not been an election, you're out of office. You don't get to just stay in because there wasn't an election. Once your term is up, if you haven't been reelected, you got to get out. So if there was no election, all of a sudden you'd find that Democrats would hold not just the House and the Senate, but by decree of there not being anybody in the positions above her, Nancy Pelosi would be the president of the United States.
Oh, yeah, that. So let's go through the order of operations with that, if you will, because I know it wasn't until I got restarted really looking back into politics and all that, because I literally had left it alone for a long time, right? It was such a headache to keep up with this and that. And then it literally was a division in our house because not everybody was Democrat, not everybody was Republican, and Daddy hated it all. So then you have that. So, um, but let's list the order of operations, if you will, when it comes to that, because I think a lot of people either have forgotten or have it misconstrued how that works, or how, like you said, if the president's not there, who falls in line next to hold that spot? And truly, is he truly the most important part of the of how all that lands?
So for our purposes today, there's really only three positions that we need to know with regards to sort of order of operations for who's in charge if somebody is incapacitated.
Mm-hmm.
So as the president, of course. If the president is unable to do the duties of office, it goes to the vice president.
Mm-hmm.
The vice president is unable to do the duties of office, it goes to the speaker of the house.
Mm-hmm.
So in a scenario where the election were, let's say, canceled, or the election were moved, um, the once January 20th, 2021 comes, if there is not a president elected, there's not a vice president elected, then you go on down the chain until you get to who is in the order of the operations and who is elected,
Mm-hmm.
which would be Nancy Pelosi. So that's so. But to actually answer your question, no, I don't think we should delay the election. What I think we should do, or what we should have started doing months ago, once it became clear that it was a possibility that the pandemic could affect people's ability to go to the polls physically,
Mm-hmm.
is we should have started building out our infrastructure nationwide to be able to allow people to vote by mail,
Mm-hmm.
which also would mean that we need to remove restrictions that prevent people from counting mail ballots before election day. So a lot has been made about the speed at which we will know the results of the presidential election and other local races, whether it's statewide with things like Senate or gubernatorial races, or even things all the way down the ballot like HCDE board trustee, or like your local county constable or what have you, local judges, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you count the ballots as they come in, you don't need to make them public what the results are. But if you count the ballots as they come in, and then you just add that to the election day totals, you can have the results of the election on election night. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to wait days and weeks later if you're counting the ballots as they come in. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I think should happen. We should not change the date of the election. We should have started our vote by mail infrastructure nationally months ago. But
Mm-hmm.
as things stand, we should keep the date the same, but nationally people should do what we've been doing in Harris County, which is making sure that poll workers have all the appropriate PPE. I don't know if you voted during the runoff, but I remember I went to the West Gray Metropolitan Voting Center,
Mm-hmm.
and there was great social distancing. Everybody was at least 6 feet apart, waiting outside and inside to go vote. They had hand sanitizer everywhere. They gave you these little like finger gloves to be
Mm-hmm.
able to like press the screen.
Nice.
You had to wear masks to get in.
Mm-hmm.
All the poll workers were wearing gloves. They had masks. They had face shields, and there's a huge plexiglass screen in front of all the poll workers as well. So everybody's very well protected.
Mm-hmm.
So you put on the finger glove. They give you these wipes to like wipe down the voting machine.
Mm-hmm.
You vote using the finger glove, and then there's a spot for you to discard the finger glove and the wipes. Then, as you make your, and of course, all the voting booths were socially distanced as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you make your way through, and as you're exiting, it's a different exit from the way you came in. They've got
Mm-hmm.
another hand sanitizer, so you can disinfect your hands again, and then you're on your way. But I think the best thing people can do if they're unable to vote by mail is to vote early, because they actually have extended early voting this year in Harris County, and you can vote anywhere in the county as long as you're a Harris County resident. You don't have There's no set voting locations anymore. You can vote anywhere in the county that's convenient for you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you vote early, there's never any lines to vote early. I
Yeah.
vote early. I vote early whenever possible because like I go,
Ooh.
I'm in, and I'm in, I'm out. There's nobody there. In fact, I was talking to Chris Hollins recently. What he said was there's a possibility that one of the locations actually be open 24 hours during early voting. So you'll be able to go in even like at midnight. I might even do that because I never voted at midnight before. You'll be able to go in at midnight and vote. And I promise you, not going to be too many people there. It's going to be as safe an environment as it possibly could be. They're doing a great job, and really a model for the nation in that way. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what we should do. Is we should follow the Harris County county clerk's office example and make sure that all of our voting locations are that safe and that clean and that secure.
Mm-hmm. Do you know? I think well, let me start by saying I got hooked on early voting. Because I know one time, I think I was working in a warehouse then, and went to vote, and I was in line 3 hours, and that was way before the pandemic. Way before the pandemic. So, um, to be able to early vote, and I'd always kind of brushed off early voting. Don't ask me why. I just had. And the one time that I did, I thought, oh, I've been missing this,
Right?
to walk in literally. And I think the atmosphere is different when you early vote versus the day of. You have all these people the day of, they really have to mind their manners, or supposed to. You have all these things going on, a lot of moving parts, versus when you go in early voting, it's like walking into a store when they just opened.
Yes.
There's
Yes.
nobody
It's awesome. I love it personally. So like it was a little different for me this past cycle because when you're a candidate, you're at the voting locations and it's like it's a it's a very interesting experience. If you can not it won't be like this year because everybody's trying to keep their distance and not get sick. But
there.
during a non-pandemic year, when you go to especially like the more popular voting locations like Acres Home
Hmm.
or over at West Gray Metropolitan, there's a lot of candidates there. So even during early voting, when people come in to vote, all the candidates were like swarm on people as they come in to vote, like push cards out
Hmm.
and be
Hmm.
like, "Hey, vote for me! I'm running for this. I'll run for that."
Oh yeah, outside, yeah.
So like so I was one of those people with the push cards, like, "Hey, vote for me! I'm running for this thing. Make sure you remember my name." And they let you bring those in to the when you go to vote. You can't have your cell phone out, but you can have as many of those push cards as you want. So you can literally like cycle through and be like, hey, this person, yeah, this person,
Really?
yeah,
I didn't know that. As many times I voted, I didn't know. I thought once you go into the site itself, that you had to put all those things away. But I guess that would be great for those who, trying to really remember who it is that they want to vote for.
yeah. But the best thing about the way we do early vote here in Harris County is that you can vote anywhere in the county
Yeah.
because it's not always convenient to go from where you are at work to your like the voting place that's closest to where you live.
Hmm.
'Cause not everybody lives by their job. Some people live like
True.
an hour away from where they work.
Hmm.
So to be able to just go at like your lunch break during early voting when there's nobody there,
Hmm. On your way to work, even.
yeah, take like five because the polls open at 7 a.m.
Hmm.
So if you start work after 7 a.m., you could go and right as they open. Not gonna be anybody there. You can vote real quick. But the thing that I want people to know, and you actually reminded me of it when you talked about waiting in line for 3 hours. Legally, your employer has to give you 2 hours to vote.
Hmm.
By law, your employer has to give you 2 hours to vote. So if election day comes, you haven't voted yet, and your boss says no, you can't vote. Make sure you remember um, that by law they have to give you 2 hours to vote.
Wow.
The issue that comes into play is when there are not enough voting locations on election day itself, and you're having to wait over 2 hours.
Hmm.
Now you've got to make a decision. It's like, okay, I've been in this line for an hour and a half. It doesn't look like over the next half hour I'm
I'm
gonna
leaving.
get close enough that I'll be able to get in and vote. Now you got to decide: do I just not vote and go back to work and make sure I keep my job, or do I
Hmm.
stay in line to vote and risk losing my job?
Hmm.
And that's a horrible position for anybody to be in.
It is.
So what I would suggest to people is just let's not even put ourselves in that situation to begin with.
That
Let's
part.
just vote early. Let's get it done. And because the other thing is like a lot of, and I see this from a lot of candidates, they want to wait until election day to be able to vote alongside their voters. And I'm like, man, you don't know what's going to happen on election day. Like as a candidate, you might find yourself having to run around because any number of things can happen when you're on a campaign.
Hmm.
Like your campaign manager might get sick.
Hmm.
One thing that I saw happen to somebody who was running for Senate is the person that was supposed to be dropping off push cards at the Acres home voting location didn't show up. So then I watched her spend like 20 minutes on the phone trying to find this person that had like 2,000 push cards to hand out to voters.
Wow.
It was already 2 hours into voting on election day. This person was nowhere to be found, push cards nowhere to be found. There's no way that she could have seen that coming, that this person wouldn't show up.
Right.
So there's 2 hours of votes missed, but
Mm-hmm.
there's also 2 hours that now you can't vote because you're trying to figure out where this person is.
Right.
So it's like you don't know what's going to happen on election day.
Yeah.
Whether you're the candidate or you're just a voter going to vote, anything can happen. There could be like a 30 car pileup like 10 minutes down the road from where you're going to go vote, and now you
True.
make to vote. You never, especially in Houston, you never know what's going to happen.
That's true. Especially
So
if you're over 45.
yeah, so if you can vote early and give yourself so like we said, early voting starts October 13th.
Mm-hmm.
I would say make a plan, and what I mean by make a plan. This is remembering when I worked for the Vets for Work campaign 2 years ago. Make a plan for where you're going to vote,
Mm-hmm.
how you're going to get there to vote. Are you going to walk? You're going to drive? You're going to ride the bus? You're going to ride a bike? However you're going to walk, however you're going to go. Are you going to go with somebody? Do you know what time of day you're going to go? Just plot all of that out. Write it down if you have to. Put it on your fridge. And then on the day that you've picked to do early voting, you and your friends and whoever you're going with, go to your local polling place, vote, get it done, and now you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah, done. And trust me when I tell you, you will absolutely, if you've never early voted, I can't stress enough how you'll love the ease of it. It's less stressful. You don't have to worry about for some, trying to hurry up to finish so the next person can get in to to do their due diligence. Um, so that's a great idea. And like you said, even planning down to the whether you're gonna drive, whether you're gonna carpool, who you're gonna carpool with, because certainly, I think sometimes voting can be like, oh, I don't know which one that is. Okay, um, voting can be like taking a test,
Yes.
right? So you don't want to be carpooling with that one that's gonna kind of make you wish you didn't know them or something along those lines. So even down to prior planning in everything prevents in everything to make
Absolutely.
sure that so describe for us. Well, actually, because you gave good nuggets when you said about the planning and all that. Um, any more nuggets you want to offer us? The legally the employer having to give the employee at least 2 hours because I was there three and I was on the phone. I was really fortunate. The supervisor that I had was amazing and he knew the lines were going to be long. He knew he had several people to go vote the day of because I think we were in the end of quarter because it was a warehouse where I worked, and so everybody wasn't able to early vote.
Right.
He managed it well, and it was like, okay, start at your lunch break. And he really managed everything well. We had to keep in touch with him, let him know how far where you are, because the place literally was down the street from where I worked, and that was back when even on election day we could um, uh, vote somewhere else because
Right.
I didn't live where I worked. So that was great information because sometimes, especially in the pandemic, and I hate to say it, but it's true. A lot of these companies are acting like um, they have our necks, like they have us by our necks, like
Mhm.
they like to push their weight. So it's always important for people to know your rights in the rules according to you and to the city and to the county that you're in. Any more nuggets? Any more legal stuff we need to know?
I think the 2 hour window is probably the biggest one, but I think another big thing with regards to planning out how you're going to vote is campaigns are allowed to take you to the polling place. They're not allowed to take you in and like help you vote. Although there are poll workers that will guide you through the process if you need help voting. Just ask for that help.
Okay.
But with regards to planning out your voting day, I think the biggest part of that is making sure you have a reliable means of transportation.
Mm-hmm.
to your polling place.
Yes, indeed.
So like I just moved to a new apartment, but where I lived before was walking distance from the West Gray Metropolitan Center. So I could just walk there if I wanted to. It was like a little under a mile, but I could walk there if I wanted to. If you can't walk to your polling place, if you know somebody who wants to vote at that same polling place, reach
Mm-hmm.
out to them and say, "Hey, I was looking to vote on this day. Are you also going to vote that day? Can I come with you?"
Mm-hmm.
Like get a group together. That also that's another good thing. If you get a group together, you can all hold yourself accountable to actually making sure that everybody votes.
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily need to know who everybody's going to vote for.
True.
Typically, friend groups vote more or less the same way.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest thing is that you're involved and that you're voting and that you take the time. There are always going to be what is called low information races.
Mm-hmm.
So, like the race that I'm in is considered that a low information race. So, what that means is that most of the time when people go to vote, they don't know who any of the candidates are.
Mm-hmm.
So, they'll vote for categories. So, if there's three people and one of them has a name that would make you think they were a black person, a lot of people will vote for that person because that's the differentiating factor. If there's four people, three of them are men and one is a woman, especially in the Democratic primaries here in Harris County, people will be likely to vote for the woman if they don't know anything about any of the candidates. So take the time to educate yourself as much as you can, and I say as much as you can because there are a lot of races. It's very difficult. Even as somebody who's a candidate, I've met so many of these people throughout the circuit of running for office. But even me, it's like you get to election day and you look at the different positions, and it's like I think I've met this person. I'm not 100% sure if I know who all these people are. If it's tough for me, who's met like 95% of the candidates who are on the ballot,
Mm-hmm.
I know it's tough for the person who's like just your everyday regular citizen who has a million other things going on
Mm-hmm.
besides, trying to figure out who to vote for and trying to make sure that they don't get it wrong. That's another thing I've heard from people is, well, I didn't know who anybody was, so I just didn't vote for that position.
Right.
And it's like, do your best. And that part, a little small part of me dies every time I hear somebody say that. It's like, do your best to take the time to learn about as many of the positions on the ballot as you can. Because you can get a sample ballot online and you can go through and figure out which seats you're voting for, and learn. Because not every seat on the sample ballot will apply to you. Um, because they put every single race on the sample ballot. So like you'll see House District 133 and House District 134. Well, you can't live in both at once. You live in one or the other.
Right.
So you need to figure out which one is yours. Which when you register to vote, they'll send you a card that has all your different district information on
Mm-hmm.
it. So use that card. Figure out what your House district is, what your Senate district is, what precinct you're in. So you can reach out to your precinct chair, who, if you have one, and you should, hopefully, fingers crossed, that you have that where you live has an active precinct chair.
Mm-hmm.
But they will also be very helpful as well. That's another piece of advice I would give is reach out to your precinct chair and ask them to talk to you about the candidates because the precinct chairs one of their big responsibilities is meeting all the local candidates and having at least somewhat of a relationship with them. So that person will be, if they're active, will be a wealth of knowledge and information to help you through the electoral process.
Mm-hmm. And you said something too, and I don't know if I want to admit this, but I think I am. Listen, don't judge me, okay?
I'm not judging. I am not judging.
If you do, that's on you anyway. But the the voter registration card,
Yes.
I didn't know. I'm gonna have to say I don't remember knowing that it had all of that information on it.
Yes.
And what all does it have on it again? Because I remember always making sure, like when it came in the mail, at one point mine used to be colored where I used to live. It was like an orangish color on one side, or whatever. And I remember thinking it's reading voter registration card. Okay, cool, I got it. I don't ever really honestly remember actually reading it other than to glance at it to make sure my name was spelled right and they had the right address and information so that if I had to show one or both, they matched.
Right.
And that has what on it again? Your blood type and what else?
So your voter registration card will have your name, your address. Make sure that it's spelled right,
Mm-hmm.
because depending on who you get as a poll worker, they might not let you vote if your name doesn't match what's on your identification.
Does it have to be such though?
So in Texas, like I said, depending on who the poll worker is, you might get cut some slack. In states like Georgia, they have what's it's like I remember the exact name of the law, but it's like basically like perfect match.
Mm-hmm.
So if even like one letter is off, they might kick you off the voter rolls
Wow.
because it's like they can't properly identify you. So they'll knock you off and say that you're not who you say you are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But in Texas, we don't have any such law. It's oftentimes up to the discretion of the poll worker.
Mm-hmm.
Although you have rights there too, you can call. There's all kinds of depending on where you live, depending on your municipality. There are organizations that will help you, um, and there are oftentimes volunteers put in from the your local parties to make sure that if you have any problem like that, they'll be there. If they're not there physically, they have people that are patrolling
Mm-hmm.
different voting locations to make sure that everybody can vote. At worst, submit what's called a provisional ballot. Although I always tell people to push to make sure you can get an actual ballot, because weird things happen to those provisional ballots sometimes. A lot of times they get thrown away. So make sure you file an actual ballot. And the first step to do that is making sure that your name is spelled correctly on your voter registration card.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that's not as important, you do not need to have your current address on your driver's license to vote. So, for example, my driver's license has my home address of the home that I own. I don't live in that house now, though, because I moved to a different city. I rented out the house. I've not moved back into the house,
Mm-hmm.
but my driver's license still has that address on it. But I'm registered at my current address. So
Mm-hmm.
when I go to vote and they scan my driver's license, what matters is that the address that comes up is correct to where you have registered to vote,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's in Harris County. That is the most important thing.
Well, the Harris County, and then also the different districts as well, too, right?
Yes. So to your question about what's on your voter registration card, name, address, it has your precinct number, which
Mm-hmm.
is important if you want to identify who your precinct chair is.
Mm-hmm.
It'll have your Senate district number in case you want to get involved with your local Senate district club, and there are a lot of them. And they're great organizations to be a part of, doing all kinds of great things in the community. So definitely look out for who, which Senate district you live in, and then also have your House district number on it as well, so you can find out who your House district representative is when you go to vote. Because we have, like I said earlier, we have elections every year, so you want to make sure that you know who is running to represent you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because so much is put on who's in the White House, which is very important. But an even more important thing is who is your city council member, who is your state house representative, who's your state
Mm-hmm.
senate representative,
Yeah.
who is your mayor, who is your police chief, who is your county constable, who's all of these things that affect your life on a daily basis more directly. Like who is voting to make sure that the pothole down the street gets filled? Who's voting to make sure that the local corporations that have these huge trucks that drive up and down our city streets, prematurely wearing down our roads? Who's making sure that those companies are paying their fair share in taxes to maintain upkeep of our streets?
Mm-hmm.
Who's doing all those things? Who's running on those things? That's saying that they're going to take care of that. That'll affect you more directly than who is in the White House.
Hmm.
So it's super important to when you get that voter registration card. I have mine on my fridge right now, and like I see it every day. I don't ever look at it until it comes time
Mm-hmm.
to vote, so like I know who my representative is, so that when I see the candidates, I'm like, okay, you're my House district rep.
Mm-hmm.
What is your platform?
Right.
Um, that's another thing. Also, don't be afraid to ask the people that you're getting ready to vote for
I was
what
gonna ask
they're
you that.
what they're going to do if they
Right.
get elected. Because I think a lot of times people, sort of get intimidated by, oh my God, that's the U.S. senator, that's the
Mm-hmm.
president, that's the mayor, that's whatever. Well,
Mm-hmm.
before they were any of that, they were just a regular citizen, just like you.
Mm-hmm.
And if they were just a regular citizen, you'd have no problem asking them that same question.
Hmm.
Well, there's still, even though they have a title now, they're still that same person. So if they're going to earn your vote, they should be able to answer whatever questions you have about the job that they intend to do once elected.
Right, because they are representing or standing in at whatever title as a representative for you. So, and I was going to ask you that too, because in the past I've heard people say, oh, when they would send out phone numbers to, for people to call your representative, and whatever, we're going to flood the lines. And I would hear people, oh man, I don't have time, or um, they're busy. No, they can't be too busy.
Job. It,
Exactly. That's
it's their job.
And what do you say to the people who think that they're themselves are too busy to get involved in um, talking to their representatives?
Priorities, right? That's one of the big themes of my campaign is priorities. If it's important to you, you'll find a way. If it's not important to you, you'll find an excuse.
Yeah.
So if you feel like your local roads are a problem, if you feel like your kid's school still has books that don't know who won the Vietnam War, like that's something that you need to find out who your local representative is and contact them and be like, I'm not happy with this.
Hmm.
I want to see a change made. I want to know what you're going to do to fix this situation.
Right.
Because that's, like we said, that's their job, is to represent you at the table. Is one thing that's been brought up a lot, especially by people in the BIPOC community, which is Black, Indigenous, and people of color. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Hmm.
So even though all of us as individual citizens can't be at all of these meetings, that's why we have representatives, because this person represents the larger group.
Hmm.
You need to make sure that that person who's at the table represents your interests. Because if they don't represent your interests, there's a chance that they're going to do something that is against your interests,
Hmm.
and that could seriously harm you, if not physically, emotionally, mentally, all of that.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's very important to make sure that you know at least who your local representatives are, and you know that what they plan to do once
Hmm.
elected. Super important. And if they tell you that they're going to do something, so let's say your House district representative gets in to office stating that I'm going to go to Austin. We're going to get money from the state to fix our roads.
Hmm.
And instead, they get money to build toll roads.
Hmm.
So you can't use your regular toll free streets. You're 2 feet up, too many potholes. It's destroying your car. You're getting flats. Your brakes are all messed up. Your shocks, everything is just done for because you're driving over these horrible roads. But they're forcing you on top of the tax dollars that you already pay to pay a toll just to get to and from work.
Hmm.
After they told you that they weren't going to do that, you got to call them out on that.
Yeah.
If your child said they were going to do something and did another, you would say that's not what you said you were going to do. You said
Hmm.
you were going to do this, you did that. It's a very similar situation here. If your representative said that they were going to do one thing and then they do another, you got to call them out on it. And if they don't respond after being called out on it, then you got to vote them out and put in somebody that will actually do the job that they say they're going to do. Now, that can be a very frustrating process, and it's not an immediate process
Hmm.
unless you put on enough pressure to force that person to resign and initiate a special election.
Hmm.
But that is a very effective method of making sure that your representatives do what they say they're going to do. So it may seem like you don't have time to call your representative, but you can send an email. You can send in fact, even more effective, send an actual physical letter,
Hmm.
because they get so few of those. They read all the ones that they get. So send a physical letter. If you feel like you don't have time to call, or you don't want to call, you don't like making phone calls, send a physical letter. They'll read it. They'll get back to you. In fact, I have a letter. Well, I don't have it. My mom has it. Has a letter from Joe Biden
Hmm.
from when we lived in Delaware and he was our United States senator. He reached out to the immigration office to ask them to allow my grandfather, my grandmother, on my mom's side to stay in the United States longer. And we
Wow.
still have that letter. which would be awesome if he gets elected. Hopefully he does. So then I can be like, yeah, the president, he tried to get my grandparents to stay in the country longer.
I know him.
But but the reason that happened is my mom wrote a letter to his
Mhm.
office. He
Wow.
got that letter. He was moved by the letter, and then he did what he could. It didn't end up working out, unfortunately. But
Mhm.
he did what he could to help my family.
Mhm.
And if you have a good representative, that's what they're going to do. That's what their job is to go above and beyond to help you um, live the best possible life that you can.
Mhm. And what's interesting about that too is who knows what it set forth. You know, reading that letter, because sometimes when people are in those positions or they live a particular life, like say for instance, if he was the type of person that has always been and from a well-to-do family where money was not an option, where you didn't have to decide, your parents didn't have to decide, are we going to pay the light bill today, or are we going to feed the children?
Right.
um, so if he came from that type of family and never saw, never had any friends, never experienced people like that, and came across a letter like that, imagine what that would do for him. So even though it didn't work out, at least she did what she could,
Right.
right? And had she not been involved, she wouldn't have known who to send it to. If she'd have sent it to the wrong person, that letter could have gotten thrown in the trash, thrown
Exactly.
by the wayside, as they say. So it's very important to be involved. Give us, if you will, or describe for us a day in the life of a candidate.
Oh boy. Okay.
You ready?
I'll,
Take a deep breath.
I'll tell you just about the day I had today.
Okay.
So I knew going to this was going to be a very full day. So I started my day off waking up at 4 a.m. for no apparent reason. It's not normal. I usually wake up around 6. I woke up around 4 a.m. today. I had a meeting with my campaign advisors to go over sort of the next week or so in the
Mhm.
campaign as we get, because the special election for me is on August 15th, which is
Okay.
also my youngest brother's birthday. Shout out to you, Acha. I see you.
Ooh.
We planned out not only today but also the week that we have ahead, because we've got a number of things that we got to get going
Mhm.
before we get to election day. Then I had a meeting with the good people over in Senate District 13 at 10, where I spoke to the group and told them, a bit about me and my campaign and why they spoke for me. And then I went to the Senate District 6 meeting, where I did the same thing. I answered a few questions from some of those folks as well. And then I started typing up some of the things that I had to work on for the week ahead. I emailed those to my campaign advisors, and then I got ready for this call. And now I'm here with you today. But no day is, quote unquote normal. There's always things that pop up that you didn't expect. Like none of us could have anticipated back in February that we would still be running in the primary like
Mhm.
6 months later. Um, but I would say typically some of the things that are typical if you're a candidate is you're going to be on the phone with your campaign staff, whether it's your treasurer, your campaign manager, your campaign advisors, people who are volunteering. If you have people that do like voter outreach for you, you have people that are in charge of fundraising for you. You got to talk to those people every single day,
Mhm.
because your job as a candidate is your well, if you're on a fully staffed campaign, which mine is not, but if you're on a fully staffed campaign, the only thing you do as a candidate is talk to voters and raise money.
Okay.
If you're on a down ballot race, especially one like mine is like super far down ballot. Um, then as a candidate, you wear other hats. So I do have a treasurer. We do have a campaign attorney. We have campaign advisors, but I am like effectively my own campaign manager. So like I build my own schedule. Um, I'm the person that reaches out. So it's like so I don't know if you've seen any of my campaign ads. We have some probably the best ads of anybody right now.
It is okay. I have not, but it is. We're gonna say it is the best ad.
They're really good. We're working with a group called Human Age Digital. They make just fantastic stuff.
Awesome.
So I set up the meetings with them, and they put out my digital ads on Facebook and Instagram. Um, I'm the one that builds my schedule on what events that I go to. So, like for example, Joe Biden does not sit and say, "Okay, on this day I'm going to do that. This day I'm going to do this." He has a campaign staff that says, "Okay, Joe, on Monday you have meetings with this group and the AAPI, and you're meeting with the Houston Black American Democrats. You mean, all these things." They build that for him, and then he shows up with the prepared materials and gives a speech, he answers questions, and he does that all day, every day. And then you have something that's called call time. So call time can be for other things, but it's usually for fundraising. So the
Mm-hmm.
way call time works is you sit with your cell phone and you go through your cell phone and you look at everybody you know and you go right on down the line and you call every single person and you ask them for money.
Wow.
You start with people that you know well and you break them into different groups. So
Mm-hmm.
you have these people could give me the maximum that you're allowed to donate. These people can give me a little bit less. These people can give me a little bit less. You
Mm-hmm.
get all the way down to people. It's like I kind of remember that person from elementary school, and somehow I still have their number. And you call that person too. You ask them for money, but you
Wow.
go through, especially for again for down ballot races. Joe
Mm-hmm.
Biden probably doesn't do too much call time because he's a known commodity. And when you're running for president, people want to give money to the person running for president. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't take too much of an ask to get people to donate to a
Mm-hmm.
high profile presidential campaign. When you're running for Harris County Department of Education, something that people have never heard of, it's a bit more difficult to get people to give you money. Although we've been very successful with that. We raised nearly $7,000 during the primary, which is
Oh,
more than any of the other HED candidates combined.
awesome.
So we've been very effective in our fundraising efforts. But that's a big one. And you spend like 3 to 4 days a week, 1 to 2 hours of those days doing call time.
Mm-hmm.
So you get on the phone. And then in this election, call time involves calling and talking to precinct chairs. So
Mm-hmm.
same thing. You take 3 or 4 days a week, spend an hour or two each of those days going down the list of precinct chairs and calling each and every one of them and hoping that they pick up. So for me, I have a Delaware number still. So when I call people, a lot of times they see it 302 and they're like, I don't know what that is. I'm not answering. So I've left so many voicemails, so many voicemails, and I've left enough voicemails in the last like 3 months to last a lifetime. But that's just what you do when you're running for, especially in a special election.
Mm-hmm.
So there's day in the life of the regular election when you've got all this time, especially as the campaign calendar gets extended as time goes on. Um, you got to announce further and further out from
Mm-hmm.
election day as time goes on. But when you're in a special election, which just got announced like 2 months ago that this was officially going to happen,
Wow.
then it's like all the things that you would have taken a year to do, you got to squeeze into 2 months.
Wow.
So when you have that year, there's like, okay, we're 6 months out, we start this part. We're 5 months out, we start this part. When you've got 2 months, it's like, all right, everything full bore right now. We're doing everything all at once. The one saving grace is that, or actually, I think for me, it's not a saving grace. I would have preferred to have to physically go to a lot of these places because that's a differentiating factor. People see who's there and who's not there. But one thing that has helped is that a lot of these things are online, so you don't have to drive and like put miles on your car like you would in normal circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of work, and I think the biggest thing that people don't realize when they get into something like this is it is all consuming. So I mean, you can ask my parents. I have a tradition that I call them after every campaign event. So
Mm-hmm.
they hear from me, which I'm sure they like. They hear from me every single day now.
Oh, that's
So I've
awesome.
got something every day. But I remember I'd be driving home from Pasadena after a campaign event,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd be calling either with good news or with bad news, right? So it's like good news, we got this endorsement, or these people support my campaign,
Mm-hmm.
or bad news, they decided to go with my opponent instead of supporting me. Um, but whoever is in your life that you love, they are running too when you're running for office.
Yep.
There's no such thing as it's just you running. Because
Mm-hmm.
whether if they want to be a part of your life, they're going to be involved in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important that people in your life know that, and they know that if they're not going to be involved, that they're just not going to see you. Because if you really want to win, you got to put everything that you got into winning your race.
Wow. Nice. How did your parents feel about you running?
So, it,
So I want to say, say it how they said it, if
so
possible.
my mom was like super on board immediately.
Okay.
I told him, hey, I'm running for HCD board trustee. And my mom was like, oh, wow, that's great. You know, we should do this. And my dad was like, yeah, okay. And then like it took, I think once he saw that my name was like on the ballot, like I
Mhm.
showed him the email, it's like, hey, you're running. This is happening. Then he was like, okay, here we go. Let's do this. So soon,
Wow.
once it became real
Mhm.
for him, like he could see it, it's like, okay, this boy is serious.
Mhm.
And he was 100% on board. And they both have been. They've been extremely supportive since then.
Yeah.
In fact, they even hosted a fundraising event for me at their house,
Oh,
which
awesome.
is greatly appreciated. They've been super on board. What I found out in recent weeks, which I didn't know, is that on both sides, well, actually, my dad worked on a campaign back in Delaware, which I didn't know about until like a couple of weeks ago. I was like, why did you not tell me this until just now?
Yeah.
And then on my mom's side of the family, her dad was really involved in local politics in Nigeria as well. So in
Mhm.
Nigeria, they have things called chieftaincies, like you get named chief
Mhm. Mhm.
in your village. And he was part of the group of people who decided who would become a chief of like a local area.
Mhm.
So so I guess in that respect, like it's sort of like in my blood to be involved like this.
Mhm.
But finding that out sort of showed me why they responded the way that they did. Like, so my dad, he's like, I've heard people say this before, right? Like, I want to actually see that you're for real
Mhm.
about this. And then once he did, and he was completely on board. And my
Mhm.
mom was like, oh, this is going to be great. We're going to get to do all these things. And turned out she was more politically connected than she realized originally. Like, she knew a
Oh.
bunch of people that had been extremely instrumental and helpful throughout this process.
Mhm.
But yeah, they've been very supportive of my run for office.
That's awesome. Do you have any siblings, and are they supportive as well?
I do have two younger brothers. My youngest brother lives in Houston. He's got one of my campaign signs in his window. So when people drive past his house, they see my campaign sign. They may or may not know what it's for, but at least they see it. And then my middle brother lives in Dallas. So while he can't help directly with the campaign, he did donate a pretty good amount of money, which I appreciated. Which
Mhm.
caught me completely by surprise. I went online one day to check what the numbers were, and I see he donated a bunch of money. I'm like, I wasn't expecting that, but thanks.
Yeah, brother. So, if someone wanted to donate to the campaign, where would they go to do so?
So you've got it scrolling on the bottom line here. So if you go to
Mhm.
my website, obsforhcde.com, there
Mhm.
is a donate tab on the top right. You can click
Awesome.
that and then click any of the buttons, and it'll take you to my Act Blue page where you can donate. It doesn't have to be one of the presets that we have listed there. Those would be great. But if you want to donate a different amount, you want to donate more than the max preset there, you want to donate less than the minimum, you can do that. We'll take any support we want to give. Every little bit helps, especially as we continue to push our digital ad campaign.
Mhm.
Um, it all spends the same. So if you're looking to donate, opesforhcd.com and click the donate tab in the top right corner.
Awesome. And I asked that, yes, there's something scrolling, and that's one of those things where, especially people are used to looking at CNN and the news. You're surprised. I'm surprised at how many people see it scrolling and don't read it. So
Well, I
that's why
think
I
it's
asked.
sort of yeah, because I think it's because we're so used to seeing that. Whether you're watching the news or you're watching
Right.
like ESPN, there's always things scrolling. So
Mm-hmm.
unless you're looking for like a specific thing to be scrolling by, there's all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things that you see, and it's just sort of like I see that it's scrolling, but I'm not looking at it because it's not important to me at this moment.
Right. Right. And it's really interesting how much information is in those scrollers though on the news.
Oh yeah, everything you could possibly want to know about the world around you is on the bottom
Really.
line.
Really, and that's what it is. The bottom line in small print, as in a lot of things, you miss it if you don't read
Hmm.
the bottom line in the small print. So let's also, I want to also talk about your other 2 points that you discussed earlier. The increase in school-based therapists.
Yes.
Huge, huge, huge. And I was just telling someone the other day, I feel like the children now are more stressed than we were growing up. I don't know how young you are, but I'm really close to 50, And I feel like they're more stressed now. Yes, they're still bullying, but there's cyberbullying, there's actual bullying. But when they were in person, there's just so much more, I think, going on now um, than it was then. And I really feel like that would help uh, the children get through. It's so many suicides and such going on. What made you want to add that as part of your campaign?
So the school-based therapy services program, the way it's currently constituted, affects kids, or excuse me, impacts kids that have intellectual and physical disabilities. So they
Mhm,
work with like occupational therapists and things like that to be able to learn how to use their bodies most effectively.
mhm,
Or if they have an intellectual disability, like for example, somebody's dyslexic, they learn how to work beyond their dyslexia.
okay.
But the way I also envision that program working is dealing with things like you just discussed, kids that have and more emotional based issues.
Mhm,
And the reason that was important to me is I was one of those students that needed a therapist when I was in school because like I had all kinds of stresses at the time, and having my parents had the resources to be able to take me to an outside therapist, and that made a huge difference for me in learning coping techniques to be able to deal with the issues I was going through at the time. But it's like for a lot of our kids, their parents don't have those resources, and if the school doesn't have it, they just won't get it.
mhm,
And even after I had already put it on my platform, I was talking to one of my friends who went to school in the area, and he was valedictorian at his school. And one of the kids that he went to school with, all 4 years of high school, they played on the same basketball team and all that. They just could not get along the entire time that they were in school together. So their senior year, my friend says to this guy, like, "Hey, like, why is it that we've never been able to get along? I get along with everybody else on the basketball team, but you and I have been bumping heads this entire time, these whole 4 years. What's going on?"
mhm,
And the kid says to him, like, "Bro, like, my mom is on drugs, and I just have not been able to deal with that, and I didn't want to deal with anybody here at school because I can't deal with that."
mhm.
And it made me think, how different could that kid's educational experience have been had he known different techniques to cope with that?
Yeah.
And had he had somebody he could talk to at school,
Mhm.
say, "Hey, this is what I'm dealing with at home. I
Right.
don't know what to do. Like I'm a kid. Like these people that are between 14 and 18 years old. These are kids.
Yeah.
Even though we tend to look at them, especially black kids, young black kids, as adults, they're kids. Kids don't know how to handle everything.
Right.
So we can have trained adults who have these kids' best interests at heart and know how to help them with these difficult circumstances. They can learn the techniques to cope. They can continue to excel socially, and
Mhm,
they can continue to excel academically, which is the biggest thing. We want kids to go to school. We want them to want to go to school,
mhm.
which sounds like kind of a funny thing because a lot of people don't like school. But we want kids to want to go to school, to be able to know that they're going to be able to see their friends,
Mhm.
that they're going to be able to learn things that will help them in the future.
Right.
So when kids don't want to go to school, that's when issues start. Because if you're not in
Oh.
school when you're supposed to be in school,
Mhm.
there's a chance that you're going to be getting into trouble. And now you may have ruined a lot of your chances at success going forward.
Mhm.
And then we look at situations where we're putting, I'll give you a perfect example. The ACLU put out a graphic a couple months ago that talked about the number of schools that have police officers, but don't have school nurses, don't have guidance counselors, don't
Wow.
have in school psychiatrists like we're talking about. So we're spending all this money to criminalize our students, but we're not spending the money to develop and educate our students.
Wow.
It's like when you criminalize somebody when they're 13 years old, they still got the rest of their life to live after they finish high school.
Yeah. And
But
that
we've
trauma
taken
can
that away
happen.
from them.
Mhm.
We've taken that future away from them for no reason, just because they were being kids. Kids don't know everything. They're going to make mistakes,
Mhm.
but they need to have the space. There's a phrase that I learned at the GLBT caucus the other day. Brandon Mack said this. He said, "We need to give people space and grace
Mm.
to be able to make mistakes."
Right.
We need to give our students, instead of criminalizing them, we need to give them space and grace. They can make mistakes. They can still learn. They can still move forward with their lives.
Mhm. Yeah, because criminalizing, when you're bringing in, like you said, more police than you are counselors. We had counselors when I was in school. Then there's a trauma there that creates a trauma, because now you're treating them like they're already criminals,
Hmm.
and I think it creates the idea to them that, okay, because I'm learning this from an adult who's supposed to be teaching me, or like you said, giving me the space and the grace to learn and develop myself, and to help coerce me into developing who I am, my personality, what my likes and my dislikes, learning the differences between different things. Instead, you're meandering me like cattle over to this area of criminalization, and that sets us, I think, into our own little road to being traumatized. And I think that's awesome that you want to do that. That's whew, child. Because not only do the children need therapy, some of the parents need therapy.
I mean, we all do, especially people in our community. One thing that we're all dealing with that I think is not discussed enough is there's a lot of PTSD that goes along with dealing with racism as Black people. And this thing is that like we sort of push down to try to cope and move through the day. But if it's not addressed, it can come out in some really terrible ways.
Hmm.
And the sooner that we can address those things, the easier it is for us to be close with our loved ones and be able to give them the space and grace that maybe we were not was not bestowed upon us earlier. So we can break a lot of bad habits
Hmm.
and bad cycles that a lot of us deal with in our personal lives.
Yeah, that's so amazing. I'm so glad that you said that. And I know my engineer is probably coming out her skin because she says that a lot. We're all dealing with some form of PTSD because of our past. Yes, it was our ancestors, but it has been a trickle down effect because they lived a certain way, and then they taught us how to live in their fears. And here we are, you know,
Yeah,
until somebody says something different or does something different, then it's the same thing. And I was just telling my mom earlier, I was looking at I don't know, some TV, um, and they were showing there was gosh, a place kind of like Georgetown in Africa called Sophia. And I'm probably saying it wrong. It was spelled like Sophia, but they pronounced it differently. And they were just black people, just Africans everywhere who had businesses, booming businesses, and their own everything, and how they literally showed and filmed how they gathered them and forced them out of this culture, out of everything, into government owned, welfare driven, um, uh, like, I can't think of the word. I don't want to say apartments, but they forced them out of what they already had built up.
right.
That's trauma. And then for them to live like that, generation after generation after generation after generation, until sometimes I feel like, especially with with us, it gets lost. That one grandmother decides she's going to stop telling the story because no, she thinks nobody's listening, and so that history gets lost, and that cycle continues of living in that fear, or living in that trauma, or being traumatized, and then nobody decides to get be the cycle breaker and um get it fixed. That's going to be like totally amazing. You talk about breaking cycles and chains in the communities that have been pushed under. Yeah, you got that seat. We need you in that seat. We need you in that seat. And then also you talked about increasing programs for after school projects.
Yeah. So CASE, the Center for After School Summer and Enrichment, currently benefits 12,000 kids in Harris County each year through after school and summer programs. So 12,000 sounds, I mean, that's a lot of students. Sounds like a lot of students. But the thing that I try to impress upon people is that there are nearly a million students in Harris County. Saying about 12,000 out of 1 million, it's
That's
like
not
1%.
even.
That's a drop in the bucket. Now, not every one of those, 988,000 other students need to be in case programs, right? If
Mhm.
you're playing a sport, like even when I was in Delaware, we were playing basketball. We had basketball year round, so we had fall league, the actual basketball season,
Mhm.
spring league, and then summer league, and then you can play like AAU and all that stuff. And if you
Mhm.
play football in Texas, as we know, Texas football is religion down here. We play football year round as well. But if you're not in one of those sports, you're not in the band or you're not in something that's going you have to be practicing all the time. When you're not in school, whether it's just the school day is over or the school year is over, what's happening? What
Mhm.
programs are you in? What are you doing? Who's watching you?
Mhm. Mhm.
I remember I want to say I was over in Sunnyside. I can't remember which neighborhood I was in, but I was talking to some of the people there at that event, and they talked about how the after school programs that they had there stopped at age 13. So the kids would be in the program from like 4 or whatever age to age 13, would be doing really well.
Mhm.
But as soon as they aged out of those programs, then all of a sudden they started getting into trouble
Mhm.
because they didn't have anywhere to go after school. So these kids started getting arrested, started seeing higher rates of teen pregnancy. And it's like kids that had such bright futures, all of a sudden that's gone because
Mhm.
they made one mistake when nobody was watching them. So if we could get those same kids to be in programs that extend all the way through high school,
Mhm.
there's no reason why, like I said before, they're still kids. No reason why just because they're in high school we can't have all these kids in after school programs, whether it's them getting help with their homework, or if they're good with their homework, just having someplace to hang out with their friends that's safe,
Mhm.
so they're not getting in trouble until like their guardian or parent is done with work. That can make a huge difference for everybody, not just for the kids either, but for everybody in the community.
Right.
And then another big thing why I want to increase number of summer programs is for a lot of students, the way that they eat breakfast and lunch is going to school.
Mhm.
There's a lot of parents right now that are concerned about feeding themselves and their kids because their kids were going to school and eating breakfast and lunch at school.
Mhm.
So if
Yep.
schools are closed, where do those meals come from?
Right.
It's the same deal during the summer.
Mhm.
School's out, where those meals come from. So
Mhm.
if we've got kids in summer programs, we're fully funding them so that kids, when they get there in the morning, if they need a breakfast, they can get breakfast. And then we're providing lunch as well. Now we can make sure not just that kids are being safe, but they're being fed. And like if you're hungry, it's really hard to focus on school if you're hungry.
It's hard to focus on anything when you're hungry unless you're standing in the grocery store.
That's the worst time to shop, like they say. Don't go to the grocery store hungry. But
And
like try getting
I don't,
hungry.
right, and I don't think that people really understood. It's like one of those things where until now, um, how important it is for that a lot of students, the only way for them to get a meal is at school. It wasn't until I really I feel like it I could be missing it, but because I remember hearing conversations and having conversations with people who didn't it's just it wasn't their world, so it didn't make sense to them. And it's like, well, not everybody lives the same or has the same amenities in life, so that is the case. We were fortunate enough to where we were a well, no, daddy just didn't want us eating at school. So whatever had to be done, like you said, priorities, y'all ain't eating that, right? So we didn't, but everybody didn't have that ability. So that will I think that will be awesome because again, when I was in school, there yeah, I was in stuff, after school programs, before I started working. After school programs in the summertime, it was daddy's program, but still, it's very important to have gosh, I had a question. I gotta find it though. Question:
Yes.
is not voting a bad thing?
I don't want to pass judgment on people who don't vote. I would prefer that people vote, but like I said earlier, it's not the only tool of change in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I would prefer that everybody did. did their own personal research into the candidates in each race that they're going to vote on,
Hmm.
and then vote accordingly. Like I can't tell you who to vote for, right? Well,
Right.
besides telling you to vote for me, if you're a precinct chair in Harris County, I can't tell you who to vote for because your priorities and your needs are not the same necessarily as mine.
Hmm.
So when I go into the voting booth, I'm thinking about things like how do we end voter suppression,
Hmm.
in especially in Black and Brown communities. How do we end things like police brutality? How do we make sure that tax dollars are flowing equitably into different communities? That sort of things that I'm thinking about. But you might be thinking about who's going to put more lights in my neighborhood. It's
Hmm.
too dark at night. Who's going to put in more lights? Who's
Right.
going to fix these roads? Like, so there might be candidates talking about something that's closer to your interests than to mine. But the only way that you're going to know that is if you get involved and you research who's running. Because
Hmm.
I hear people complain all the time, like, oh, somebody needs to do something about this, somebody needs to do something about that.
Hmm.
There might be somebody running who wants to fix that exact thing that you're talking about. And
Absolutely.
a lot of these races are super close. And if you and your friends had gone out and voted for that person that was going to do the thing that you said needed to be done, you could have gotten them into office, and that could have changed everything about your day to day life.
Hmm.
One thing, when I was living in Dallas in 2018, I was working with a program called LVEC. LVEC stands for the Latino Voter Empowerment Coalition.
Okay.
And one of the things that we tried, and what that program does, among other things, they go into high schools and talk to high school seniors who are of voting age and get them registered to vote. So one thing that we try to impress upon those kids is a lot of times these races are decided by less than 1,000 votes.
Hmm.
Sometimes the winner gets less than 1,000 votes. The thing about my youngest brother, his graduating class had 900 kids in it. So if
Hmm.
all 900 of those kids had decided we're going to all vote for the same candidates because we feel like these group of five candidates are addressing the issues that we want to see changed in our community.
Hmm.
If just that one graduating class of high school seniors had all voted for the same person, they could change who their sheriff was. They could change who their mayor was. They could change who their city council person was. They could change the face of their community just by them going to vote.
Right.
And like 900 people in the grand scheme of things is not that many people. But if you
But.
get 900, but if you can get 900 people to vote, especially like in small towns, when
Hmm.
a lot of times these races for like mayor could be decided by like the winner gets like 400 votes.
Right.
So like if you could get like a high school graduating class to go vote, they could flip the election.
Hmm.
And then you can and that can change everything for everybody in the community. Like if you had a sheriff that was always looking the other way on police brutality cases, and
Hmm.
then you voted for one who said that he was going to hold his officers accountable for that.
Hmm.
Now all of a sudden, there's a whole generation of kids that's going to get to grow up without getting beat up every time they mess up outside.
Yeah. Or every
And
time
if you
it's
grow
just because.
and if you grow up not getting beat up, that can change your perception on a whole lot of things. And it's all because this small group of people decided they were going to vote a different way than what had been happening in the past.
Hmm.
So I try to impress that upon people. I don't want to say it's good or bad to not vote. No, it is bad to not vote. But I think people should make sure that they're doing their research and being involved in voting. Like, don't just vote just to vote. Because
Hmm.
oftentimes people will get into the booth, they'll know who they're voting for president, but they don't know who anybody else is on the ballot.
Hmm.
Because there's been so many people that will vote for president and then just leave the rest of the ballot blank,
Yeah.
which is almost as bad as not voting.
Right. Well, because they didn't, you know. And that's one reason why I wanted to explain. Had you explain earlier what it is that Place Seven and the Board of Trustees, Department of Education, Board of Trustees is responsible for, because there are people I've come across people who will only go in to vote for the president. I've heard people say, "Oh, well, the only important person that's running is the president." No, no, there's so many other parts to all this that make the country run, and it's not just the president. um God dog it. I lost my question. I'm writing as you're talking, so that's why I was like, ah. Okay, so how do you feel about straight ticket voting?
So I was a big fan of it. We didn't have it in Delaware. You had to go each individual position. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
straight ticket voting, if you know already that you're voting for all Democrats or for whatever reason, all Republicans, it saves people a lot of time to vote. It's like, I already know I'm voting for all these people. Let me just hit one button, boom. And it was huge for us here in Harris County the last two cycles. We got a lot of bad candidates in, a lot of bad candidates out, and a lot of good candidates in.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, our county judge Lena Hidalgo, who I think has handled the pandemic about as well as she could, given that our governor has blocked her and our mayor at every turn. She was one of those people that got swept in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
We've got, I believe it was 18 black women judges into office in 2018 because of straight ticket voting. So it's been really great for us, not just as black people, but as people that want to see progressive change here in Harris County and in the city of Houston. Um, I know why the Republicans in Austin got rid of it because they saw that it was no longer helping them; it was hurting them. And in the cities, they were very rapidly getting to a point where they could no longer win in the metropolitan areas. So they said, "Well, let's give ourselves somewhat of a chance by getting rid of straight ticket voting." But I'm a big fan of it. If for nothing else, that it can make voting way quicker. So now all of a sudden you get in, and all you've got to do is you hit straight ticket, and then you can vote on the different ballot initiatives that are at the end of the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
So you're pressing like four buttons instead of like 50.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm a fan of it. It's unfortunate that we don't have it now, but I think um, most people will still vote all the way through the ballot. And I hope they do. When I talk to voters, I do impress it upon them that they need to not just vote for the president and for senator, but make sure you work your way all the way through. And if you don't know who to vote for, if nothing else, like there's probably candidates outside standing there yelling at you to vote for them. If you don't know who to vote for, just like take their card and just vote for that person.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they were willing to stand outside in the Texas heat to get your vote,
Yeah.
there's a good chance there's somebody worth voting for.
Hmm. So, how do you feel about, or what's your take on Kanye running? Oh, you
So
thought you was gonna get away without me asking?
he's he's made it clear that it's he's literally running to help Donald Trump stay in office. He has not presented anything resembling a platform
Mm-hmm.
for what he would do if elected. He is not. One thing I am not a fan of is people running like these vanity elections.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what Donald Trump did. Unfortunately, he won, but that's what it was. It was a vanity election. He was hoping to launch a television network
Mm-hmm.
after losing. But Kanye has never held public office. He's never run for office. He does not have a track record to show how he would react in certain situations. I don't like surprises. I
Right.
want to know when, especially for president, right? But if you're running for like a down ballot race, a lot of times this is your first time ever running for anything. So there's no way you could have built a track record. But if you're going to be president of the United States, I don't want anybody who's never run for office, anybody who's never held office, to be in that seat. So I want to be able to look back on your career in different situations and see how you reacted, see what type of policies you tried to enact, how you worked with the different powers that be to get problems solved. I want to see what you've done. And if you
Right.
don't have a track record that shows me what you've done in those situations, then I can't vote for you. So I look at him, I think it's a joke. Um, like I said, he's doing it to try to take black votes away from Joe Biden. I think he's definitely overestimating the influence he has over black people in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
But that's literally why he's running, is to try to help Donald Trump, and I can't support that in any shape or fashion.
Mm-hmm. Just thought I'd ask. And you actually said what I was thinking, and I was gonna say anyway, was that even when I first heard it, I was like, okay, first of all, that'd be like having another Trump in office.
Exactly.
Really? Not to say that it can't be done, and not with Kanye, but maybe someone else who's a little bit more astute on policies and how things run. Not to say that he isn't, but like you said, he hasn't presented himself in that light ever.
Plus, I
Um,
mean, there are people that that never held office and then they became senators,
mhm,
but they at least spent the time to learn what it meant to be a senator, to learn what they needed to know to properly represent their states. I mean, Donald Trump hasn't done that. Kanye has not shown an affinity to want to do that, so I don't support that at all.
yeah, at all. So I just thought I'd ask, get your little 2 cents in. I
And
know. I know the look on your face. I think you thought you was gonna get away with me not asking, but I love how you have answered questions not as politically correct as I've heard people who are running for anything in office. Did you have to change the way that you talked when you decided to run, or the way that you approached answers and approached conversations when you started to run? Was there something you had to change when dealing with people?
somewhat because you sometimes when people ask you questions, they're not asking you in good faith. They're asking you to be able to sort of trap you to an answer
Hmm.
for a question they may ask you later on.
Hmm.
So when you don't know 100% who you're talking to, you sort of have to be careful about how you answer questions.
Hmm.
So like, but that's just like anything else. Like you don't talk the same at work as you do when you're with your family and friends at home.
Hmm.
So in that respect, no. But yeah, I mean it is a little bit different when you're running for office. Like when you're wanting to be an elected official, there's people expect um, certain things out of their elected officials. They want you to look a certain way, they want you to sound a certain way,
Hmm.
and you got to give people that. Um, but at the same time, I think that's like what you see with me is what you get anyway. Like I don't feel like I'm putting on airs or anything when I
Hmm.
answer questions or when I get dressed to do things like this. Like this is what I would wear to work, really. So
Okay.
it hasn't been that different, but it is a little bit different, yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And so we're at the end of the show. So thank you for coming at such a late notice because
Well, thank you for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
listen, and there will be other parts, as I've stated to Lashelle, that she always has a spot whenever. And the same for you. I will extend that to you as well.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. At the end of my show, I normally give a what I call a love note, and it's just to give a little something to give people to think about for until they see me again, which is next Saturday. But just give something, for people to think about. What note or nugget would you drop for the people?
Well, this is at least here in Harris County is one of the most important races that you may have never heard of.
Hmm.
So while if you're not a precinct chair, you can't vote for me directly, I hope after watching this interview today, you'll feel compelled to reach out to your precinct chair and ask them to vote for me, Obes Babara, for Harris County Department of Education Board Trustee. Like I talked about today, my platform is pretty simple but effective. I want to increase access to school-based therapy services. I want to expand Head Start throughout the rest of Harris County. And I want to increase the number of programs organized through CASE, the Center for After School Summer and Enrichment. Election day is August 15th. So we got 1 week from today. By this time next Saturday, I'll know whether or not next time you see me on one of these screens, whether instead of saying HCDE candidate, it says Democratic nominee for HCDE. So hopefully we can make that dream into a reality, and then we can make Harris County dreams into realities and create a brighter future for Harris County children.
And make Harris County great again. Anyway, I'm just saying. And my love note is go vote, get involved and go vote. It's to me, it's really just that simple, and I can say that because I came from a time where I wasn't interested truly in voting. Didn't want to hear about it. Didn't want to talk about it. Didn't want to be in the room when people start talking about politics. I politely left. But it's hard to have 2 cents in or be agitated about something that's not done. Potholes, like he's saying, the school programs when they're taken away. It's hard to have a complaint if you didn't do what you need to do to put the people in place to have the things that you say you wanted. So get involved, go vote. He stated a really good thing when he said, have a voting party. Don't play. I'll bring the ice. I'll even drive. I'll be nice. I'll drive. So, it's your girl, Miss Mimi, aka Mimi the Great. It's the Love Power Radio Show. Follow Obes at Obes. Tell them where to find you.
Hey, follow us. The handle is the same everywhere. So it's facebook.com/obes for HCDE. That's OBESFORHCDE. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Handles the same there too. Obes for HCDE. OBESFORHCDE. And reach out to your precinct chairs. I mean a lot. Ask them to vote for Obes on August 15th. Thank you so much.
Awesome. If you want to follow me, Love Power Radio Show on Facebook and Instagram, as well as my other names. I'm not that simple. Just Mimi on Instagram, or my whole entire government, Mariam Iganu. Until next time, see ya.